Welcome to Scary Basement. Press X to scream. Every month, me and my friends here at the Super NPC Network are drawn once again, still inexplicably and still supernaturally, to this basement, wherein lurks every scary thing that has ever been in a video game, including a game shark that plays you, a costume change that turns you into a real-life werewolf, and a game walkthrough that mysteriously mirrors your real life somehow. I'm Roxy Polk.
And as you gesture towards me and I clumsily get into it, I'm Conner McCabe on the podcast for the first time.
We've also got...
I'm Jeremy Schmidt, also on the podcast for the first time. Scared, but excited to be here.
And then we have the lovely...
And I'm Haley MacLean, also on the podcast for the first time.
Wow, a bunch of first-timers with one vet. I hope we don't get too scared or in any sort of danger while we're here.
It's okay. I'll protect you from all of the spooky monsters down here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I really am setting
really
this up like
flashlight.
I'm setting this up like we're doing some sort of like narrative or bit to the whole thing, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, considering some of the elements of the game that we're discussing today. Roxy, thank you so much for having me on the podcast for the first time. I want to go ahead and have us just talk a little bit about ourselves and just do a little guest introductions, because people are so familiar with you. You're the Press X to Scream mainstay. You're a celebrity here. You do Scary Basement. You're a fantastic artist and streamer. Anything else you want to say about yourself?
Yeah, just that we're trying something new here. I'm excited about it. Kind of like uncharted territory. Doing this with 3 other people instead of just one. So this is gonna be neat. I'm excited about it. Yeah, you guys know me. I guess I'll give my plugs here.
Sure, go for it.
End, I don't know. Or no, we could do plugs at the end.
Plug away, my friend.
Okay. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, Blue Sky. Streaming on Twitch 3 days a week, and I actually streamed this very game that we're talking about literally until 2 a.m. last night.
Oh my god!
Ooh, almost the witching hour.
That's on brand.
Yeah, doing my homework right at the last minute. I feel like I'm in college again.
Or you're the freshest to the podcast with the freshest takes because you just finished playing it.
That's very true. That's a good point.
Yes.
Very true. Well, I've introduced myself. I'm Conner McCabe, one of the contributors here at Super NPC Radio. You might know me from the little podcast that could Call Me By Your Game, where I have on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. I'm an actor, a writer. I don't really stream that much anymore, but I do a lot of stuff, so that's who I am. Who's this little guy over here, Mr. Jeremy? What do you want to tell people about yourself?
New to the show. Roxy, I don't know if you have names for the veterans of the show, but I'm gonna call myself a Scream King.
Oh,
for
I
this,
love that.
does that work?
Yeah.
Scream Kings
I like
and Queens
that.
for the for Press X to Scream. I am the host of a show called Video Games, a Comedy Show, and it is exactly that, is a comedy show where we also all love video games, comedians talking about video games together. Like Conner, we met at the UCB Theater, so we're writer, actor, we just do all things comedy together. We love that crap. We perform, on the regular. And I guess I'm not on Twitch, but I guess you can follow me on Twitter at Ocarina of Crime, and you can follow me on Blue Sky at Jeremy Schmidt if you want.
I think they want to. That's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, why not?
Great.
You're making such a convincing
Great
pitch. Maybe you could do that.
It sucks everywhere. Online,
Yeah,
so,
no, it's true. You're not wrong.
Yeah, but yeah.
Gorgeous. And then Haley, what do you want to tell us about yourself? What do you want to plug today? Fill in the blank slate that we have here.
Yeah, my name's Haley. I've been in the game space for a while now. I was a games writer for about 5 years. And now I'm actually a video game lawyer, so I work with like, game developers.
It's amazing.
Yeah, don't worry, I don't do criminal law. You can.
We can commit all the crimes we want, folks.
Exactly.
Oh God, hide my emulators.
But yeah, I specialize in intellectual property, tech, and just like basic corporate stuff. But almost all my clients are game devs, like indie game devs. So helping them get set up and organized and get all their IP and their new little companies and helping them answer questions about how to get grants and stuff like that. So that's very fun.
Cool.
And I also am the community manager at MinMax as well. So I went on with them in about April. And since then I've kind of been on a lot more content than I think even Ben originally intended, but I just like had a lot of fun with it. So I manage the Discord, and it's like the loveliest group of people, so they make it very easy. That
what
job
a great
is very
place
easy.
that is.
It is the
I'm
nicest.
over there posting once every 2 weeks, but what a lovely group of people there.
Yeah, and our mod team's like the sweetest group of people too, and like, you know, there's never any problems. Everyone's so sweet. It's the best community. And then just on the podcast, sometimes on additional shows. We're doing a deepest dive right now for Alan Wake 2. So we're recording episode 2 of that tomorrow. So that'll be really fun. Ooh. So we kind of split it up into chunks and then just spend 3 hours talking about each chunk and like not moving forward. So we don't know how the game's going to end, but all we do is just talk about the first like 6 hours extensively and then wait to move on to the next chunk. So I'm really looking forward to it because the middle chunk is so good at that game. I won't jump ahead. I don't want to spoil anything about that game, but I'm loving Alan Wake 2. It's so good.
Oh, I'm so
That's sweet.
Glad to hear that. I mean, as of today, nominated for Game of the Year by the Game Awards. So
I think it and Baldur's Gate 3 have the most nominations of any other game. I think they each have 8.
Really?
Yeah.
Man.
Wow, Tears of the Kingdom, not as many?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh, we're all so cold on it now? Oh my
I think
god.
it's just, this year has been way too good for video games, like in the best and worst way, because nobody has enough time to play everything, but there's so many good ones.
I have so much stuff to finish for next month.
Yeah.
Gosh, a lot of gaming leftovers. But yeah, how many segments is the deepest dive going to be on that game? Are you splitting it into 3 or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we already did episode 1. That's up on the MinMax YouTube, and then we're recording episode 2 tomorrow, and then I think the final episode will probably be recorded end of November. We put a little couple weeks in between so everybody can not have to feel like they have to play the whole 10-hour chunk in like 2 days or something.
Yes.
They'll have a couple weeks to do it.
I'd love to ask you about that. We do a similar format over here. It's our Games Club series where we go through one game in a quarter, basically. So right now we're going through Resident Evil 2 Remake as a little crew. And
nice.
It is so... We record every 2 weeks. We do 2 episodes every 2 weeks. But it's so difficult not to, especially when you're liking the game, to just charge ahead.
Keep going.
Are you stopping? Are you ahead already?
No, we have to stop. Like, it's a very strict rule. Like, I mean, our community can go forward if they want, and a lot of times they do, and like that doesn't matter. But for us on the podcast, we have to stop there because we don't want to have anything in the later part of the game influence how we feel just about the middle chunk or what have you.
That's
so. I'm streaming the whole thing too for MinMax, and it's funny because a lot of our community is ahead of me, and they're just like, Haley, you're gonna love this next part. They're and I'm like, oh, I guess okay. And then the next part comes, I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, there's one particular chapter in Alan Wake that's like my favorite thing I think gaming's ever done. It is the best thing ever.
Damn.
It's the best, and I can't talk about it because it'll just spoil it. But like, if you play that game, you'll know the exact section I'm talking about because it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's so fun.
My goodness, your viewers are to you as you are to us because you're the only person who's even dove into the second game out of the 4 of us. So, which we'll be getting into some table setting for this game. You know, all of our histories with it, but also Remedy in general because all of that is so closely tied and relevant that I definitely want to leave some time to talk about that. Just a little bit of extra table setting for the podcast is you might be hearing this one of 2 ways. You could be a subscriber over at the $10 DJ Toad tier on our Patreon at Super NPC Radio. And, Press X to Scream is one of the, 4 bonus podcasts you get on a Tuesday during the month over at our network. But you also could be listening to this on YouTube because we're putting this on the Super NPC Radio YouTube channel on the day it releases. So if you're listening there as well, thank you so much for listening. Feel free to like the video. You can subscribe to the channel. And if you want to hear more stuff from the network, we're all over social media at Super NPC Radio. And that includes our, we do a games club that we had referred to, the Resident Evil one, but our old games club, we've started releasing for free on a podcast feed. So they're there's the Super NPC Games Club, which is wherever you get your podcasts, you can find that. We just finished releasing our entire Legend of Zelda series, where we used to do this differently, where we would cover a game for a whole episode, which was, Jeremy, I don't know, would you describe it as the most work you've ever done for a podcast?
Yeah, it was stupid. Wow. We should have never done it that way. And it was my fault. I was like, yeah, let's just do all the Zelda games in a year. And it was like,
that's a lot of Zelda games in a year.
We'd have like a month to do a whole Zelda, and just imagine if one thing in your life comes up. It's like over. It's like completely But I mean, I was playing DS Zeldas back to back. I don't think I've recovered since.
No, brutal. So for anybody out there who's interested in checking out our legacy content, that whole series is out, and then starting in December, we're going to release our Metal Gear Solid Games Club that we did starting at the beginning of 2022. So if you're playing that Master Collection or whatever it's called, you got a lot more pods coming from us. But that's it really for the additional table setting. What I want to do first is talk about all of, like I previewed, our experiences with this game and Remedy in general. So feel free when someone is called upon to share however it makes sense for you. Haley, since you're our main guest on the episode today, I would love for you to dive in first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, my experiences with Remedy was kind of just this last month only, because I completely missed it in 2010. When Alan Wake 1 came out. Red Dead Redemption had just come out. Super Mario Sunshine had just come out. It was a good year. So I guess, and I don't know, something about, I wasn't that into horror games. I'm slowly starting to get more into horror, especially these last couple of years. I just feel like I'm less of a chicken, and I'm like, and I can appreciate that they're very good games. They just scare me. But I played Resident Evil 4, and that game's amazing.
I was gonna say, you seem very brave. I'm just getting a lot of brave coming from you.
I'm really brave. I was trying to be really brave this year, and I heard that the writing was good in Alan Wake, and then I was like, I guess I'll just tough it out and like be a little scared. But then it turns out Alan Wake 1 isn't that scary. There's like one jump scare. It's not it's survival action or horror action, not survival horror. Yeah, so it's like more about just shooting and getting through areas than like really ominous, scary moments with jump scares like amnesia or something like that.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Like replaying this in my mind, I remembered it being more survival horror, and I'm like, this is not survival horror at all. This is like horror action. What is happening? All my inventory's gone each chapter.
Kind of. Yeah. It's just like run through the areas, and like the people you fight are kind of like ghosty, but other than that, they might just well be people in jeans like walking around. Like the same kind of energy. But I played the first one. I fell in love with the first one. Like I don't like it. Just really clicked with me at the time, and I was writing notes like literally Alan, like a crazy person. Like I think this is so interesting, and it just felt very. I could tell that it was very purposeful and tactful, and they had an idea, and they're like, this is our idea. And I think that's such a fun thing when a studio is so cohesive with the purpose of their art. They're like, here's what we're trying to do. And I'm like, oh, you did it. Good for you. And I'm like, that feels like a nice package of good art. Like, that feels really good. So then Janet Garcia on MinMax was like, oh, you love Control. Play Control. That was my 2019 game of the year. Because that's, she's like, oh, it connects. They're all in the same universe. Like, you'll like Control. So I was like, okay. So I played Control in like a week and loved it. It was so good. Control is also amazing. And it has all these interesting overlaps. And that's like the Remedy connected universe, which so far is just Alan Wake 1, Control, and Alan Wake 2, because they don't have the IP rights to the first two Max Payne games they made, and Quantum Break either, so they can't really do that. They very tongue-in-cheeky have a lot of Max Payne hints in Alan Wake 2, which you probably see in the memes and stuff, but they can't technically be like, and Max Payne's here, like, because they don't know that anymore.
On your left, and it's just like Max Payne should be here missing poster.
Sam Lake, who's technically the face of Max Payne, but they can't just be like, I'm Max Payne and Sam Lake. Like, he can just be Sam Lake only. But they're doing a lot of interesting stuff with that. But I really like the way they cross over these ideas, and I think a connected universe is such a unique game thing. That's not done very much. Like, Stephen King does it with his works. And I'm trying to think of other mediary things that it's like everything's in a connected universe that isn't just a series, like it's kind of hard to come up with ideas, especially in the game space. I can't really think of another game series that does this that well.
I really enjoy Yoko Taro's stuff, and all of his stuff is like connected universe with like the Drakengard and the Nier series.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there was even some mobile game thing needed too. But yeah, like the first Tracking Guard game was on the PS2, and then like the most recent Nier remake was on the PS4. So yeah, that's probably Alan Wake, like with Remedy, and Yoko Taro, probably the only ones I can think of too, though.
Yeah, and like Zelda, I guess technically.
Oh
but,
yeah,
but
I guess every
like,
Link is the same Link, kind of.
But
But
then
different?
they never remember each other, and I guess technically they're all separate, so who knows if it's connected, but yeah.
Jeremy, did you have one on the tip of your tongue, or were you just like really thinking?
No, I was gonna make a joke about the Kevin Smith movies all being Jay and Silent
man.
Bob related, but that's not a game.
No, but what if?
Pretty close.
But man, what if it was?
That's great. So you blew through Control as well, and here you are, I guess, catching you up to date is like you're in the middle of your Alan Wake 2 experience right now.
Yes, I'm like probably exactly halfway through the game right now, I would say. Yeah,
Interesting.
So trying not to. I like you were saying, I just want to finish it in like two nights. I think if I wasn't doing the deepest dive, I'd be done it like 2 weeks ago. But
Yes.
it's kind of nice to split it up and like think about it, because it is one of those games that warrants like taking a break and be like, oh my god, what the heck, like the things they're doing narratively are so crazy, and that's what they're focusing on.
Yeah.
It's like doing a book club, like, which game clubs are like book clubs for games, but with Alan Wake it's like way more like a book club.
Yes.
Because it feels like you're reading.
Totally. I think I was thinking about it leading into this episode, but knowing that you're playing that actively, I was like, oh, there are so many questions I have about having finished Alan Wake now that I'm like, I wonder if there are answers to things that I don't know if I necessarily got answers to. But that'll be for another time in this episode. Thank you for sharing about your time with this game, but also Remedy in general. Jeremy, I know that you've played at least one Remedy game, but what's your history with that company and Alan Wake in general?
Okay, huge Max Payne fan growing up. Like, loved Max Payne. Not really so much the story or even Max Payne the character, but like loved the gameplay of that. Like, I still think that's like one of the coolest moments for me was like doing the bullet time stuff in that. It just felt so good. And I've actually replayed Max Payne on PS4 or whatever when it came out, and still feels great. I mean, it just feels so good in that. And I have never played Max Payne 2, but that first Max Payne game I just really enjoyed. Didn't have an Xbox 360 growing up, so I couldn't play Alan Wake. But I do remember when the game came out, and in my memory, and tell me if you guys remember something different, but Alan Wake was like really hyped when it like came out, and then people did not like Alan Wake when it came out. Like, it was not very well received.
Oh, really?
And one of the big things that people like knocked it for was all of the product placement that was in it. Like, they had a deal with like Verizon and Energizer, and I'm looking it up now. It's like Lincoln and Ford and like all of these different companies.
Oh my god!
And all of that's been removed for the remaster, by the way. So that's like not a thing anymore. But I just never took Alan Wake seriously. I was just like, oh, that seems like people said it was kind of boring and not very well written was what I was told. But again, this is 2010, 2011. But then Control comes out. Control's like this incredible experience. Like, I just like love Control in kind of in that same Max Payne way where I'm like, oh, this just plays so good. And that's when I started to kind of put together kind of what Haley was saying about like the connected universe, and it started to kind of get super cool in there, and I was like, wait a minute, there's something going on with all this that is really, really fun. And I remember them like referencing Alan Wake, or like people online talking about Alan Wake and that being a part of this all. So you start to feel like, oh, the community that like loves Remedy, like people are starting to get like really hot on Alan Wake before Alan Wake 2 comes out. Like, it felt like the opinion of it was like sort of being revised or something. People were kind of looking back at it like, oh no, this is actually pretty good and worth checking out. And as of this recording, I've played I have not beat the game, so I've not beat Alan Wake 1. Don't care about spoilers though if we want to get into like all of the ending and stuff. Oh, you know,
the
opening. No, I think I've like finished like up through like chapter 3 at this
Nice.
point.
Okay.
So I'm like maybe halfway through the game, and
cool.
I think is it?
Did you wake up in a hospital like a retreat?
Yes. Wait, did I?
I know. I'm asking if you remember doing that because that's the start of chapter 4. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in like that beginning part of chapter 4.
Okay.
Interesting.
Happy to be here. Anyway.
Hey, happy to have you. And it wasn't a requirement to finish it. So Jeremy,
and also enjoying my time with it. You know,
Good.
I was like, I mean, maybe we'll get into it, but like. The game hit me initially as like just like off-putting. I'm like, I do not like Alan Wake as a character, and I don't like. But then it was like again, like the combat started to get very like. I was getting hooked on this like half flashlight, half gun combat, and I'm just like, I don't know why this works, but it kind of does.
Nice, dude. And you know, I remember you loving Control so much when it came out. It was our. You know, it was Video Games and Comedy Show's 2019 Game of the Year.
Game of the Year, baby.
Oh,
it was
really?
Loved it.
Also, like so close. It was because our last Games Club election by our patrons ended in a tie. We, the contributors, had to vote on the top 2 nominees, and Control lost out to Resident Evil 2 Remake. So we were this close from doing Alan Wake for this, Control for the Games Club, and being basically in Haley's headspace over there. So yeah, that's been one I've wanted to play for a while too. Roxy, what's your history with this? With Remedy and Alan Wake?
So I played a little bit of the original Alan Wake, like around when it came out. Didn't really jive with it. There's like, we'll get into it more later, but like chapters 2 and 3 are kind of a slog in a way that like. I put it down and was like, I'll play more of this later, and then never did. And then actually ended up watching like Let's Plays and stuff when it came out, which was like, over 10 years ago, 13 years ago? So it was finally like, okay, we're doing a podcast about it. I'm just going to play it. And then everyone was like, oh yeah, Alan Wake 2 came out. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that was also happening. And I had played Control earlier as well. So this was like my first time actually going and beating the game, getting the ending. But then there's like some DLC and stuff that I didn't do yet. But like after I beat it, people on my Twitch chat were like, oh yeah, narratively those are important too. So make sure you either play those or watch them or something before you get into Alan Wake 2. So I will eventually get back into that. I got super into trying to find all the thermoses without using a guide. I got 91 out of 100 without using a guide. So
that's impressive.
Almost. Didn't get them all. Missed a bunch of manuscripts too, which I kind of want to like go back and get all of those. There's also like other little goofy achievements, like there's a tower of cans that you can look for to like take out. There's all of the optional like TV shows and radio broadcasts and stuff, which is so neat. I kind of like got into the collectibles of this game more than like the combat in terms of like gameplay stuff. But the story as well is just really neat. Having some like vague knowledge from like years ago when this came out. So I knew like I had gone through the story, but things like I completely forgot the ending. So I was like, oh man, what's this gonna be? So it had been just enough time that this felt really fresh and new to play it. And like I had played Control earlier, which definitely like you can tell how dated the remaster feels in terms of gameplay and like what Remedy has learned going forward, especially like with Control and everything, like being able to do telekinesis and like the gunplay feels so good. And the way that they will like intertwine music into their game as well, which is something I had completely forgot that the original Alan Wake did as well, because I was just used to seeing that with Control. I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Although you get copyright claimed on some of it, even though like, you know, they paid for it, they own the music still, like YouTube.
What song got copyright claimed? I'm curious.
So in Control, it was the one. There's the like
one,
that
the
hallway.
one song, yeah, like the big like the big hardcore song or whatever.
The Ashtray Maze song?
Yes, that one.
Weird.
At least Twitch.
That's the original IP.
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes Twitch or YouTube will like strike things like that, even though people own it. Like I have a mod who will make his own music, put it on a video, and then somebody will try and copyright claim that, even though he literally made it. So who knows? It's broken. But it was very cool also playing this in a shared experience like on stream, because people would keep like talking about their experiences with it. We had like a couple of raids from people who were like super fans who were I felt bad because I was like, man, chapters 2 and 3 are a real slog. Why is it feel so padded here with the combat? And like super fans were like, yeah, that part sucks. Like, we love this game, but we know that part sucks, so don't worry about it. So I was like, oh, okay, good, because like I'm enjoying this game.
Yes.
And just, yeah, the storytelling, like, I don't know if anything else like on the 360 or like that generation of consoles was trying to tell a story the way that this game was when it came out. So it's a very neat thing to kind of like think about in hindsight. And like, I forgot that it got dunked on so bad, Jeremy, like you were talking about. Because like,
yeah,
they
and I mean,
planned for a
you
sequel,
know,
but
it was also like so anecdotally from people I would talk to too, because I think the game did review pretty well at a lot of places too. A lot of people praised it, some people didn't, but
okay.
that's to what you're saying. It's like so mysterious. Like that's the thing about all these games, right? Like Control 2, it's like so much mystery.
And I think it felt very much like a TV format in a way, where they planned for there to be more. They planned for this to be like a season ending, and then we get a second season and stuff, where like there's going to be more mystery because we've got more to pay off later.
Well, did
so I can
anybody
see that
play,
like rubbing people the wrong way because it felt not as finished, maybe.
Yeah, what they tried to do that. Remedy did with the game. That was like a half TV show, half game, right?
Quantum Break.
Yeah.
Which I never played.
I never played it either.
Watched.
Do we know if that ties into the verse, the Remedy verse?
They make reference to it, but they don't own the rights to the IP for Quantum.
Oh, they lost it too.
Oh, dang.
I believe so. So they can't. But like, there's certain actors in Alan Wake 2 that come back and their characters in Quantum Break, and you're like, okay, you're your Quantum Break character, but you can't say it, so we'll just pretend it's not them. Like, because all the actors who are the models look like themselves in real life. Like the guy who plays Alan Wake looks like Alan Wake.
Yes.
But it does have a different voice actor, but they do a lot of that intermediary stuff. So like, you know, layering, especially Control did it so cool. It's just like layering of the actors, real life acting on top of gameplay elements, and it just looked like, why don't more games do that? This is the coolest looking shit ever. Like, oh my gosh, I love it. And it's just Remedy does that so good, because it seems like a simple thing to implement, but I bet as soon as you like insert like an actor into a game space, it could look really janky and stupid. But they do it in a very artful way where it feels like there's a reason behind the fact that the actor is now in this media, like on a television set or as like a weird ethereal thing that you walk through. They do it really cool.
Yeah, I think the only other person I feel like that I know of who kind of does stuff, well, actually the Nier people do storytelling that is similar, where they're like inside and outside the story, but also Kojima, I think he's like, you know, he's always making references to, you know, Solid Snake and the actor who plays Solid Snake, who's part of the world of Metal Gear Solid and all that stuff.
Yeah, so Roxy, you pretty much caught us up to your history with the company in this series. Did you have any last things you wanted to share about that before I jump in?
I guess playing this made me want to go back and play Max Payne 1 and 2, because I never played those as a kid, and those are the two that Remedy made. So Max Payne 3, everyone was like, don't play Max Payne 3, it doesn't matter. Only play 1 and 2 because Remedy made those.
Yeah.
So it did make me want to go back and do that, and then like I'm already getting recommended deep dive, like, the interconnected universe of Remedy's games videos on YouTube, which I would be interested to kind of dig into seeing like the overarching how everything connects. And like with Haley talking about how Alan Wake 2 seems to do things. I'm gonna wait, of course, until I play Alan Wake 2, but I'm very excited to see like how that pays off. Yeah. Especially because sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, finish your thought.
So in the remake, they did put a couple of little new things. Like there's QR codes that you can go to, and there's new little like 1-minute videos. And then also there is an envelope from the Bureau of Control that is in like the sheriff's office. Because when I was in chat, someone was like, hey, located within this room is a reference to Control. So I was like, okay. So I was like looking at every little thing to find it. And yeah, there's like a little tiny letter from the Bureau of Control. So like in the remaster, they even added like little things, which was really neat to see like how they're trying to make it more connected, even in really little subtle ways.
Yeah, because I think the sheriff's dad works for the bureau.
Yeah,
So-
that seemed to be the implication.
Yes. So then,
Interesting.
that's them trying to sprinkle control in there. Maybe posthumously. Was that not in the original one, I wonder? Maybe they added that after.
I think they mentioned something about like her dad being a part of like some sort of organization or some thing where like when it originally came out, you could just think like, oh, the old timers kind of have seen something like this happen before, so maybe they know to prepare. So you probably think that. But now that we have control, they can be like, oh no, it's actually a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they left it open-ended and then made it work in a more interesting way, which could be very cool. That's what they did.
Neat.
Sort of like it's from like a well done version of like the George Lucas school of adding stuff to your finished media almost, but just in a seemingly tactful way. Because again, I played the original Alan Wake, on my old dusty 360, so I didn't get those quality of life of those cool Easter eggs and details.
I also played the original, but on Steam, which is even dumber.
I heard. So I have something to say about that because I'll get into my history, which is like if you know me on like from our series of podcasts, you know that I get to everything late. The example I always like to give is in 2014. I came to my roommate and asked if he had heard of this rapper named Kid Cudi, who I think broke in around 2007. So that gives you an idea of like how I just miss a lot of stuff, which, I feel like this year is a really great example of like you can't catch everything. So I feel a lot less embarrassed about it than I used to. But when it comes to video games, I was such a primarily Nintendo kid, so I missed all sorts of stuff. I got an Xbox 360 in 2012 for the first time, so I had like heard of Max Payne. I didn't even know what Alan Wake was until the remaster came out. Which was that last year or
2 years ago?
2 years
Yeah.
ago? I hadn't even heard of it. I knew what Control was, but I didn't know they were a part of this company that I'm now fascinated by, Remedy. And kind of like you were talking about, Roxy, you're like, I want to go play Max Payne 1 and 2. I want to play those. I want to play Control. And I'm like, do I have time to fit Alan Wake 2 in before our Game of the Year stuff? Because I think I kind of have to. So I've been late to all this stuff. That being said, like we were talking about before the recording, Haley, I heard you talk about your experience with this first game. Was that around 2 months ago at this point that you were on that episode? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Around 2 months ago, yeah.
And I can't even remember if you were effusive, if you like loved it. I mean, you gave us a little preview today, but the way you were talking about it, I was like, this is interesting and I want to play it. So, found myself at a retro store one day, bought it for, I think, $8, and gave this a shot. And so this is my first game in the entire series, and I'm really eager to get into the rest of them as well moving forward. And there was a thought that I had, which you were sharing, and I was like, oh, that kicks me off, but I lost it already, so it doesn't really matter.
I had one last quick question for table setting before we get started. Is like, are we all actually, Conner, I know you're not specifically, but are any of us here David Lynch nerds? Like at all? Like, does anybody anybody watch Twin Peaks?
I want to.
You should.
But I haven't. I should.
Season 1. I mysteriously had an entire class about David Lynch in college.
Oh, cool.
So
That's cool.
I've watched like all of his stuff. I had to choose between David Lynch and Jane Austen. I knew nothing about David Lynch at the time and was like, he does horror movies, right? Sure, I'll take him. I did not know what I was in for.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, Twin Peaks especially. Like Twin Peaks and Deadly Premonition feel so like close in their DNA to this game, along with like, plenty of Stephen King stuff. Sure.
I'm not a big Stephen King. I don't know a lot about Stephen King's stuff other than some of the hits, but I do know David Lynch. I'm a huge David Lynch fan, and specifically Twin Peaks, which there is like so much going on in this game that is like directly referencing Twin Peaks, but then also there's just a bunch of stuff that just randomly references David Lynch's film career in general. Like Roy Orbison is like a heavily featured musical artist in this game, and it's like that's like Blue Velvet stuff. So there's like things going on here. There's like they're really like doing bending over backwards to just like reference all the coolest shit they can possibly think of in this game, which is so
Sam Lake
appreciated.
loves Twin Peaks. Like,
Yeah.
he's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Well, so now that we've, sort of at least set the table when it comes to, our experience with the game and, a lot of what Sam Lake has done, let's just do a little brief table setting on what this game is, even though we've kind of talked about it for a little bit. So I'm just going to be doing a little monologuing. If anyone wants to jump in at any point, feel free. I might also turn to all of us. And a lot of these things we've kind of shared already, but just so we have a base understanding out there for anyone who's listening who maybe has not played it or is less familiar, Alan Wake is a 2010 action-adventure game developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Microsoft Game Studios. It was released in May 2010 for the Xbox 360 with a Windows version following in February 2012, so a little less than 2 years later. And of course, the remaster that we've been talking about, yes, October 2021 for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, the Xbox Series, and then also a Nintendo Switch version in October 2022. I can't imagine that. I mean, I love the Nintendo Switch, but anytime one of these comes out on there, I'm like, this can't be good.
Yeah, I feel like the only game that's really done that right in an insane way is Witcher 3. Like, somehow
that's what I thought of too.
Yeah, like that, and also Nier Automata did a pretty good job where those are both like very graphically and just dense games where you'd be like, how can the Switch do that? So I don't know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Alan Wake 1 was going to be an open world game too, and then they ran out of funding, so they like vastly backtracked on that.
Yeah.
So like the driving sequences that you do are like the peaks into what could have been the open world of Alan Wake, and they definitely didn't go back and optimize because they ran out of money. So when I was running it on my PC on Steam, 2010-year-old game should run fine on my new computer. It was chugging in the open area bits. Like how many polygons they had in the mountains or something? Probably too many.
Yeah, they did not fix that for the remaster either, because on my PlayStation
really?
4 Pro, it was still chugging, and maybe a PS5 would be able to do it, but I don't know. Seems like an optimization issue. I'm not sure.
Definitely.
It certainly sounds like it. I mean, we'll get into it, but I do think that parts of this game, even the old version, look really good, and there's a lot of interesting lighting.
Beautiful.
So I'm like, that's probably didn't help at all. The story follows best-selling horror novelist Alan Wake as he tries to uncover the mystery behind his wife's disappearance during a vacation in the small fictional town of Bright Falls, Washington, all while experiencing events from the plot in his latest novel, which he cannot remember writing, come to life. Little bit of editorializing I want to do there is that Alan Wake goes to Bright Falls with his wife because he's having this like severe writer's block, and so it's kind of like supposed to be this escape where he can go to. It's very idealistic too. As like a writer, Jeremy, I bet you could relate to this. Of like, I want to rent a cabin and like just have a typewriter in there and go to work.
Oh yeah, but at the same time, it's like huge eye roll right away. Like he's so like mean to his partner about his writer's block, and like he's acting like a quintessential kind of douchey writer, which is like immediately a big like, maybe I'm just triggered because I'm like, I see it in myself. You know?
Yeah. So
well, I think also it's just strange the way that they present it. It's almost like she surprised him to be like, oh yeah, now you're going to deal with this here.
Oh, yes.
Where he was
right.
like, I thought we were just coming here to chill out. Why are you springing this on me? Which was like, why are you guys not communicating? This is, okay, it just seems not great all around.
And the way he chooses to respond is, God damn it! He's like freaking out and screaming.
Not great.
Yeah.
Very much.
Alan Wake's an asshole. I think like they want us to know that.
Yeah.
It's
like, that's his
I
character.
like that though, kind of. No, I don't like that he's an asshole, but I do like when your protagonist sucks, kind of. Like you're like, I have to like follow this guy who just like I don't like his character. You know what I mean? His character.
Mm-hmm.
This is different, but it kind of is like following Cloud in Final Fantasy VII Remake. He like hates everything, but I'm like, I want to watch him
loser. and Max Payne's kind of like this too. Max Payne's like, anyways, the darkest shit ever happened to me, and I smoke cigarettes. He's like very gruff and like way too noir or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I like how they're distinct characters. Like, I'd much rather have this dude I don't like, who is a specific character doing his thing, that I can follow, than just like a nothing character I'm supposed to project onto.
Oh, yeah. Give me him over like a Nathan Drake, like, I think any day.
Totally.
It was just so funny how much I was yelling at the game, too, going like, God damn it, Alan, run! Do you want to die? Because he'll jog. Being chased by guys with knives, he could not run to save his life.
The last thing I want to touch on this before I just sort of like take us through the rest of this little brief introduction, table setting stuff that I've been sharing is that about his character being just kind of like a shitty guy. When I was playing it, I was like, is this how they wrote it, or is this just like what 2010 protagonists were?
That's a valid question.
Just curious, but I think it's my assumption is that it was intentional.
I think so, but so much of the game reinforces like how cool Alan is and how cool other people think he is.
I know.
But it comes off as being like ironic because he's not, because you inhabit him, but I'm not sure if that was the takeaway we were supposed to have. Like, I think they did think we were supposed to think he was cool. I'm not sure. What do you guys think about that?
I think we're supposed to hate Alan, or not hate Alan, but we're not supposed to like Alan. Like, I think he's the stereotypical writer guy that we all know. It's like, he's this. He quotes Stephen King as the very first thing he does. Like, that's the epigraph of the game, is him quoting Stephen King.
Yes.
And he just is like, he's jerky to Alice. He's like, don't bother me, I'm on vacation. Oh, you brought a typewriter? I don't want to write. It's your job, Alan. You can't take 2 years off. Like, you're going to have to write something. But I think we're not supposed to like him. And then that kind of brings up interesting theories down the road, which I don't want to talk about now because it's like very like late game chat. We'll keep talking about the intro.
Cool.
But I think that they did that on purpose for us to maybe be questioning if Alan's even real.
Totally. You're getting
know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think if you like have engaged with a lot of pop culture and fiction, you're already primed to start thinking, questioning everything. I think like the game does a good job about being like, what's real? You don't know,
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the like structure and pacing goes, we had talked about it earlier with I think another game, but how this is structured sort of similar to like a TV series. The chapters in this game, which there are 6 in the main game, are broken up into episodes, which all contain their own plot twists and cliffhangers. There's also 2 DLC episodes, which Roxy, I believe, referenced.
Titled, I still gotta play them.
Me too. The Signal and the Writer. And as we go along too, I'll probably... Well, Haley, did you play either of those? Okay.
Yep. Okay,
you're going to continue to be like our Alan Wake czar. We're just going to be going to...
in our first Deepest Dive episode, Ben was like, you're our Alan Wake expert. And I was like, do not put that responsibility on me. This is the hardest series to be an expert in because I could say anything and someone has a different interpretation because that's like the point. You're not supposed to be like, the answer is X. You're supposed to be like, maybe it's XYZ. So it's kind of hard to be like an expert in Alan Wake.
History just repeating itself of the podcast host putting a target on your back. That's not very fair for you. We had touched on this as well. We've been talking about Sam Lake. This game was written by Sam Lake, and then I apologize. I should have looked up the pronunciation of of Miko's last name, Miko Ratulati. I don't know. I swung and missed at that one. This game took over 5 years to create, and as Haley said, was originally developed as an open-world survival game.
Crazy.
As an antithesis to Remedy's prior linear Max Payne games. Of course, this game ended up being very, very linear, which is really nice for a game that I'm trying to get through for a podcast.
Yeah.
Similar to, even though Resident Evil 2, as it opens up, it becomes sort of like a Metroidvania in certain ways. This game is very much down the barrel, a linear game. And yeah, when the game came out, it received positive reviews from critics, but did also receive a ton of criticism from fans at the time. And it's been sort of interesting to see how, like Jeremy was bringing up as well, how there's been sort of a rise in appreciation for the game. We'll have to talk about why we think that is as we go. And then lastly, we've been talking about it as well. The sequel was just released a couple weeks ago on October 27th. So we are like living in this strange world where two of us just played most of the game for the first. Well, three of us just played this game for the first time, basically. Roxy revisited the part of it that she had played, and now 2 is out, which was going to be dancing around that game the whole time, I feel like, on this episode. As far as just like table setting and base understanding of this game goes, does anybody have anything else that we feel is important to get out before we get into actually like the meat of the episode and our discussion on the game? Okay. But if stuff comes up, like, feel free to just jump in and be like, "Ooh, this." So when we start this game, we were kind of getting into it earlier, but I want to talk about just how you are introduced to the game as well, and the character Alan Wake, like we discussed. The first thing he says is a Stephen King quote, and kind of like we were discussing too, I just kept wondering, like, who is this guy? What are they trying to tell me by having this character who is so prickly in so many ways? And so I didn't have a ton of expectations going into it as well. As far as like getting into the game and the presentation, Jeremy, since that's one of the parts that you consumed, did you have any additional thoughts as well about like how they usher you in to Bright Falls with Alan?
I was immediately like stunned with how little of the game you get to play right away. Like how many cutscenes there were, how much it is like cutscene over, now walk 2 feet, and then new cutscene, and then boat arrives at the and it was like, oh, this is a 2010 gaming trope, I think, which is like we take so much control away from the player, because I mean that's the era of like what, like Arkham games, BioShock games, Uncharted games, where, you know, they're like almost on rails, some of those experiences. Not some of the ones I named aren't, but yeah, that was the first thing I was like kind of shocked by. I was like, oh, I have to reacclimate myself to this idea that it's like it's not going to be like a modern game, which I'd kind of forgotten because it looks so nice right away. Like it looks so pretty, and it's like the remaster looks so great. And then yeah, but then like, you know, I walk in that diner for the first time, and it is the exact layout of the Double R diner in Twin Peaks, and I'm like, wow, I feel like I'm at home, kind of, in a weird way. So it's like there's like it's both like surprising and charming, kind of at the same time, and yeah, man, I mean I cannot stress enough just like how good this remaster looks. Like, not all the character models I think are great, and sometimes they like glitch out and do weird things, but like the lighting of it, it just like, everything really worked kind of right away.
I kept remarking like just how beautiful it looked.
Yeah.
And like that made some of the things like, maybe the animations weren't as updated or something.
Yeah.
Like stick out more because of that. Because it is very easy to forget. Oh yeah, this is like a 360 game. Mm-hmm. This did come out then, but it looks like it came out now because I did such a good job with the remaster. And I think even at the time, like the lighting and the graphics and stuff were pretty well praised, I remember.
Yeah, I would be curious. You know, I know Haley, you said the Steam version chugged at moments. What did you think about the look of that version? Because I have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I thought it looked good. I think it aged really well. That era of games ages good. Like, I think nowadays it's all about how good can we make the characters look without it being Uncanny Valley. But back then it was like, this is a person, they're a little clunky, but like it's person shaped, and then your brain's like, okay, and you just kind of accept it. And I've looked at the difference between the Alan Wake model in the remaster and the one I played, and I kind of like his face in the original one. I can tell that the remaster one, like, he looks more high def and he technically looks better, but I don't know, something about playing this, like the way it looked in 2010 kind of hits a little bit different without that sounding pretentious and annoying, but it's just like,
that's neat.
That's just, yeah, like it looks that way. And I think the art style with the like whole dark presence thing, like lighting being such a key element of this game, like you literally use light to fight, so of course they probably spend 90% of their time on like the lights engine to make sure everything looks really good. It's like you don't really need to care too much about facial features, it's more about how light makes the facial features look, and I think they focused on that and it may look better.
I can see that. It might have been also in preparation for Alan Wake 2, like working on the remaster, trying to make that model look more like how he's going to look in Alan Wake 2, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Possibility,
more like
but
the actor, because they care more about the actor looking like him in Alan Wake 2 for sure, because the actor is everywhere in that game.
Okay.
It's totally different, but it's somewhat reminiscent of like the Peter Parker switch
that was weird
that they were done. That still is perplexing.
They said that's because they couldn't do his face in their new engine. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you have a better engine now. It can do whatever you want.
Don't lie to us.
Just say you wanted to make him look like Tom Holland and move on. Like, that's what you wanted to do.
Yes.
The game does start though with like a combat section though, right? Where you're like going through you're like meeting all the Jack Torrances, like the ghost Jack Torrances or whatever.
I think before you even get on the ferry and have these, like your first of many gorgeous, escaping shots.
This I know that it's
funny.
like a tutorial section sort of, but this made me scared to play it because I was like, I hate this.
Oh no!
but then once they kind of let you get you off rails a little bit, like. The arenas are bigger, you know, there's like more options in terms of how you want to approach combat scenarios. I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling way better about it. But at first I'm going like, oh gosh, what is this? Like, why do I have to do the light and the, you know?
Yeah, I was definitely stressed out by that beginning, especially because it like the game, that combat sequence is very linear where it's funneling you from almost like, you know, once you get off the freeway, little island to little island across a bridge, but it at least taught me like a good tutorial section will. This is what you use. This is the thing that lowers their defense, which is the flashlight. There's safe spots, which are like these overhead lamps. It heals you. And also I think might replenish your battery a little quicker. But yeah, as far as like the game, because I've already keep mentioning that I played the 360 version, and there were some things about it that I really was impressed by how it looked. It was a lot of like the character models I thought were like pretty impressive for the time, but as we touched on, the animation, Roxy, you said was kind of funky in the remaster. I thought it was very strange and in the original version, which
they just kept the same armatures or whatever you would call that, I assume. Like, it's the same animation, but with, like, a different coat of paint over it, so...
For me, it kind of played into the unsettling nature of the game and the mystery of all of this, like, this darkness that's, like, coming down around you. Could you relate to that at all, Haley, or were you like, no, it just looks weird to me? Specifically the acting and like, the animation of the models.
Yeah, like that's probably the clunkiest bit of it is like the animations, but yeah, I guess they didn't have a very big budget working on this game, and it seems like they cared more about the writing side and then the light side again. So they were like, oh, look, just whatever. He'll look a little weird. His running cycle is so dumb looking, but whatever.
Yes.
Just keep it in.
I think that intro sequence also, like, I touched on it a bit about how Alan can't run. Like, it gets you used to, like, this is how slow you're gonna be, and hey, guess what? There's no stamina bar, so you can't tell when you're maxing it out. And when you do, then he runs even slower for a while, and it takes him forever to get back up to speed.
They got rid of that now, like, too. He just runs now.
Okay, thank God, because, like, even when playing, like, Silent Hill 2 or something, like, when you stop, James will, like, be all out of breath and pant, but it does not impede your actual movement. So, like, they were able to convey, like, this guy is not athletic, he's not, like, in shape, similar to how Alan isn't, he's a writer. But, like, they're not gonna make the game less fun for you to move
Yeah.
through because of that. So it felt like a huge detriment, especially when like enemies can just sprint at you super fast and get in your face, and they frequently spawn behind you, which was driving me insane by the end of the game when I was playing it. So like and when you dodge, it uses up that sprint too.
Yeah.
So that was one of the big pain points for me playing this.
I accidentally played this game with training wheels. Well, whatever the opposite of, not training wheels, but like ankle weights, because I played the first 2 chapters within a couple days of each other. I had to take about a week off before I jumped into chapter 3, and I didn't remember that holding down the dodge button would be your sprint as well, or like pressing it into a run. And so I was just trying to, like, if I was being chased by too many enemies, like dodge and then dodge again, but they kept catching me, and I was like,
they can do
so
like a
hard.
3-hit combo that, like, I was playing on easy mode. I was like, how is this easy mode where they can just decimate your health? They take a long time to take out as well.
There are some brutally difficult enemies, for sure. But I mean,
it's their numbers. Like they throw a lot of them at you, like wave after wave, and then that thing I said about them spawning behind you, like, drives me insane. I was like, why?
That actually caused me to play the game with more fear the whole time, because I experienced something similar, Roxy. And so if I would clear an enemy, if I didn't get that like effect where you clear the enemies in an area and it sort of goes into like a brief slow-mo moment and there's like a sound cue. Do you all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
First of all, when I get that, I feel so safe.
And it's an endorphin rush. I'm like,
yes. But if I don't get that and I've like just maybe taken out one enemy, I'm immediately like swiveling around like, where are they? They're right on top of me, aren't they?
Well, that presented as like a kind of in a fun way, I think, for that first boss fight, because I was like, who else is there around? But like
for Stucky,
right? He's like,
okay,
yep. He's like zipping around you, like, and he almost never stops, like, or at least in my experience, I kept trying to chase him down, and he kept zipping around, and it was like, it just created this really cool like moment for me where I was like, I think I've cleared this whole area out. Who else is there to find? And it was like, finally it was like I just saw a little like a blur, and I'm like,
like,
well, he yells at you about Nordic walking,
unsettling or something.
There's, while we're on the combat right now, I would love to continue to discuss it, because I thought it was one, like, kind of a highlight of the game for me personally. Haley, do you have any thoughts on the combat from this game at all?
I think it's interesting that some people really don't like it, and then other people are like, yeah, that's fun, because, like, I've heard some people at MinMax be like, oh, I wanted to play that, but it's just the combat was too annoying for me. And I'm like, I'm like the opposite. I find it really fun for some reason. I think it's smart to have the fact that you need to be close to the enemies in order to be able to hit them. Like, it's impossible to hit them unless you're close enough to flash them with a flashlight and then shoot them, because that sets up this combat situation where you can't just be a chicken and be behind a tree and like poke out to shoot. Like, you're gonna have to come out, you're gonna have to look at them, you're gonna have to turn your flashlight on, and then you're allowed to shoot them. And if you hide again, they'll just become dark presence again, and you have to start from scratch. So I think it encourages like people to not be a chicken, which I think maybe that's why I'm not as scared with this game, is because it made me just rip the Band-Aid off and be like, go out there and fight them, Haley. You do your Resident Evil 2, like, hide behind a corner.
I think that's, mentioning Resident Evil 2, I think I went into this being like, it's a survival horror game, which it is not. Right. It is not. Like, saving those flare shots, I'm like, I gotta save those in case I need them later. Then you get to the next chapter and they're all gone. So, like, my tactic of being like, I gotta save my heavy hitter stuff for later, like, super came to bite me in the ass, because it's like, that stuff just goes away. Yeah. So by the end of the game, I was just dropping the flashbangs and doing flare shots on everything, and it felt much more satisfying once I did that. So it took me the whole game to rip the Band-Aid off, like Haley was talking about. So that would be my advice to anyone who's listening to this who hasn't played it yet. Just don't worry about that. It is an action game. You are gonna lose your inventory. Just have fun with it and throw everything at everything, I guess.
Was anybody like disappointed at at either like the fact that it wasn't more of a survival horror game, or like that it was, or the tone of it at all? Like, did it work for everybody generally, or like, because I mean, if you're expecting like, because I would describe it as like baby's first Silent Hill or something. Like, it kind of plays a little bit that way, but it's just absolutely not scary. So
yeah.
I think I was a little like, I love survival horror, so you can't make a game scary enough for me. I love that crap. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think for me at least, because I'm so new to the genre, I wasn't disappointed at all, and I was just kind of taking the game for whatever it would present to me. Mm-hmm. So that was okay for me. But Roxy, you're a survival horror fanatic as well. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it really. Especially like I mentioned briefly in chapter 2 and 3, it feels very padded. It feels like a huge slog to try and get through those forest segments where it was just like, this is driving me insane. It's just like the same forest, just a bunch of guys. I'll think, oh, I found a treasure chest. Okay, cool. I got some ammo and stuff. And then immediately you get ganked and lose all of that ammo and like anything you got from that usually, which just made it kind of feel like unsatisfying. And just like, when I got to the part where you were shooting in the streets and everything, it felt so much better. I was like, oh yeah, I wish the gameplay was like this. Like, it's more open. You've got like the cop with you too, so it's like, I guess maybe this is kind of jumping ahead, but basically having like another character to help sort of distract the enemy so you can actually get shots so they're not just like up in your face when you're trying to reload or something, to like kind of either slow down the enemies a little bit, or just like maybe make your reload speed not so damn slow, or just like have to be so small. Like that revolver, he has to reload every single bullet and the shotgun, and it's like, this is an action game. If this was a survival horror game where you have to pace it more with things coming at you, I get having a slow reload, but this is an action game. What are you doing? Don't
Yeah,
so like little things like that just kind of like added up to, by the end of the game I was just like, God, I just wish they had gone more one way or the other. There's like little hints of each type of like, this is action or this is survival horror, and it didn't work as well for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could totally see why you would feel that way, because like in some ways the game is like, it presents as restrictive, like this ammo and like your supplies are really valuable, but when you are ending every episode like a JRPG with like 100 potions, when there's no healing items in this game, but as an analogy, is like, you're like, oh no, I wish I would have used
constantly
that more.
There will just be scenes and stuff too where like, oh, Alan falls down a cliff and now you don't have your gun anymore, and it's still the same chapter. Like, you're constantly losing your shit and you don't know when you're going to, so I'm like, okay, I need to keep at least one flare shot so I can like one shot a boss or something if I need to. But just like, then that can go away just because he fell down a hill, and like you don't know when that's gonna happen. So yeah,
I think it could have definitely benefited from like less ammo or something, just to make it feel a little more precious. That said, I still like.
Alan's
like
also
I said,
wearing like 5 coats. He has all the pockets in the world. Put it in your pocket, you idiot.
Yeah, it sits in a really weird place genre-wise, where it's like weird fiction. I mean, that's kind of what Control is too. That's I'm guessing that's kind of what Alan Wake 2 is like as well. Is like just weird fiction. It's like not particularly scary, but it's like unsettling, unnerving, kind of strange, mysterious.
Yeah, and like you said with Twin Peaks, it's very Twin Peaks vibes, which is kind of the same thing. And I had someone in chat actually make a very good distinction. Like, I don't know if Remedy knew they were making a horror game when they made this, because they probably just thought they were making a weird game. I don't know.
Yeah, Haley, what about you? Was it I knew you said you're kind of you don't play a ton of survival horror games. So no. Tonally, what do you think of this? Were you pretty, you're into it? The first one?
I was pretty relieved it wasn't that scary.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because I wanted to play it, and I'm not that good. But like Alan Wake 2 is a lot more scary as well, I'll say. Like, they lean more into, they're so inspired by Resident Evil. It's just it's Alan Wake Resident Evil. Like like genuinely.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Even more appealing to me now. Tell me more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Control is even a little scarier than this game in some ways. Conceptually,
Control
too.
Yes.
Yeah.
some of the monsters
Existentially.
in Control, especially like the AWE, like there's a boss at the AWE's DLC that's like actually terrifying looking.
Yeah.
He's so scary looking.
The guy who has to stare at that item
Oh, I
forever.
love that.
Like
I love that mission.
That idea creeps me out so much.
Everyone
Yeah.
forgot about him, and he's just
Yeah.
like, help.
Yeah, help.
It's there. It's in 16 hours.
Yeah, this game, like, while it presents as scary, and we're surrounded by the darkness, and there is the scary lady who we have a couple of flash moments of seeing her after meeting her at the diner. Barbara, and then there's I mix her name up with the Lady of the Light. I think Cynthia is the Lady of the Light.
Lamp lady.
Yeah,
Lamp lady.
I could be mixing that up, but while this
right.
game presents as like scary, it's not that scary like you all have been
It's horror
talking about.
theme, not
Yeah.
scary.
Like I kept waiting for more shoes to drop in this game when it came to like horror or more psychological stuff, which
God, also when Barry comes on the scene, it like changes the entire vibe because he's like a
he has so
sitcom
much
character.
brevity.
More like
I love Barry. He's just like plucked from some other genre and put in here, which I appreciate because he's
He
just
gives
like a
me
fun
Roman
character.
from GTA 4. Like he's such
Oh
a
yeah.
He's
Oh
like,
yeah.
cousin, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
just running around. Like him wearing Christmas lights during that one scene. That's like, I wish I looked like Barry so that could be my Halloween costume. Because like, what a good Halloween costume that like
Yes.
2 people would get if I played that.
so good. He felt so out of place, but I loved him so much, and I felt safe around him because I kept just thinking like they're not going to do anything bad to this guy, and they like almost do a couple times, but he's pretty safe.
It's like Leon in Resident Evil 4. It's like he's just a cutie and they're not going to hurt him. So as long as I'm Leon, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
The parts with the cutout when he's like bringing
Alan
the
Wake
cutout around, that was like the funniest shit. That was my favorite part of the whole game. It was so
Yeah.
it's like I did not remember this. This is so funny. Why is he's so obsessed with keeping this cutout safe? Like it's very
Yeah.
funny.
I want to touch on one more thing before we maybe just like talk about the story a little deeper as well, because there's also just questions I still have. One thing I'll say at least about like the world and level design is that like I liked exploring Bright Falls in general.
Yeah.
Whether it be like going through the like mill in that one episode or going through the town where they're getting ready to set up for the festival where you're with the sheriff. I love just seeing like, and that's something I enjoy in games in general is like, oh, this is where they would do this. This is where this happens. And I think that visually I thought it was designed very well, even in the 2010 version. Did you guys have any thoughts on just like the world design or the level design? I would say for me, the only real criticism, and I barely would call it that, is like when you're exploring an area, the only way that they like don't really let you go places is if there's a cliff you're like, okay, this is the end of exploring this area. That would take me out a little bit, but generally I liked it. Jeremy, you had like just like a limited time in this game. Did you have any thoughts on like the level design or the world visually at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is sort of, again, very Twin Peaksy. Like the flora is like of that area, which is like probably some of the most beautiful the United States has to offer. You know, it's just a gorgeous, very peaceful, very sleepy area. I mean, it rocks. I mean, I think this is a great setting in general, right? Like, I mean, what did I watch for Halloween? Was it like It or whatever, which is like another Stephen King thing where it's like same deal with the town. Like, you know, you just love a good small town. You love a good, you know, everyone has their secrets or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone's fake nice. It's like, yeah, it's cool.
Either Haley or Roxy, did this leave any impression on you as well?
Yeah, totally. Because I am currently living in the Pacific Northwest, so it's
true.
very funny that this is
bet
like
that hit
happening.
different.
Yeah, it does. It truly does. It's like, oh yeah, this is my backyard, kind of. But it's like so many small towns I've like driven through in either Oregon or Washington, which is really neat. And then just the amount of detail they put into their set dressing in each location. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why I was annoyed by combat, because another reason. Sorry, I keep harping on this. But because I'd be exploring the environment, like, ooh, I'm looking for a thermos. Ooh, I'm looking for a page. Oh, I'm looking for a stack of cans or a secret TV show or radio show. And then I get attacked by dudes where it would interrupt my exploration. So I really enjoy that, like finding the fire towers, all these other like off the beaten path places that you could just miss if you're just trying to mainline it through the story. They have a lot of little fun areas for you to explore that make it feel very lived in and designed, and like somebody put extra work into like this dumb little advertisement or this poster. And like I love looking at stuff like that in games like fake books or whatever they have. Which is really neat. So I felt rewarded for exploring, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, definitely. Any thoughts from you, Haley?
Yeah, I thought it felt very lived in and very like, it kind of reminded me of the town in Night in the Woods. Like you could tell the writers were from that area, so they like knew how to write like a small town where everyone knows each other and every building has like a name, like because it's the only of that building in the whole town. Like let's go to the diner. You don't need to specify. We're just going to the diner, the only one. Like that kind of energy.
Yeah.
And especially the diner too. Like I didn't know it was based on the Twin Peaks diner until someone told me that, and then I saw a picture. I was like, oh my god, it's just the diner. But
they're even talking about the pie and coffee and stuff too. Like they really wanted
very
you to
Twin
know.
Peaks, yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked, there was even, like, just walking around that diner. It's not just a diner. Like, they do a good job of, like, all the little items around, like, make it look like someone just worked a shift at the diner. Like, they clearly cared. Like, you can see Rose's pens, like, near the, you know, cash register for when she writes down the total or something. Like, it's not just a cash register on a table like GTA 5 might do in the chicken shop or something. It's like, no, this is Rose's corner where she writes her receipts, and they like made the corner for Rose. Like I think there was a lot of intention, and it makes it feel more memorable, and I think that's why so many of the areas continue to be memorable. Like, and even in Alan Wake 2 in the trailers, it's like they show Alan's writer's room, and you're like, the writer's room, you're like, I know it right away, the Al room with like the windows. And it's, they knew that they probably were going to be using these places a lot more, so instead of it just being a random diner, they're like, this is going to be the diner. We're going to come back here like 20 times. So we got to put energy into this one little room. Otherwise, coming back here is going to be boring over and over again. I think
also like the ambient dialogue with NPCs. Like when I got to that first diner, I stood there for a really long time until everybody exhausted their dialogue. Like the brothers will ask you to turn on the jukebox, and they'll call you Tom very early on. And that like activated something in my brain where I was like, oh yeah, the Tom guy. Oh yeah. What the fuck? They put this in here that early. That's so cool. Yeah. And then like, the Ranger and Rose will have like a conversation for a good long time. Even the lamp lady talks to you quite a bit before you go down that hallway. Like it's very cool how much extra effort they put into to make these characters feel more realized. And like they're living in a world talking even when you're not there, you know, because they've got so much dialogue.
Yeah, there's like a lawyer lady outside the courthouse when you have to go to the courthouse to like talk to the sheriff and stuff like that. And she has a whole routine where she's outside in like the parking lot. And she's on the phone. She's like, what do you mean? Like clearly having trouble. Then she comes in and she goes to the front desk. She's like, I need to talk to my client right now. And they're like, I can't help you. Like you can't go back there. And they're having this fight. And you could just like run and like go right and like miss that whole thing. But they drafted a thing for her to be up to like during the whole time where you're hanging out in that area, which is cool. And it doesn't have anything to do with the story. It wasn't particularly important to hear that. It's not like later on you're like, the lawyer lady, there she is again. Like you never see her again. She's just like a lady in the town. But you can tell that the people, like the person who works at the courthouse knows her from outside her job as a lawyer, and they're like, can you go away? I'm at work. And they're like, I need to see her. They're just like fighting. It was very small town, and I think they were trying to do that with as many places as possible. Honestly, Alan Wake 2 is kind of lacking in that a little bit. Like a lot of the NPCs are kind of just like, hi, and you run by them and you're like, okay. But then there'll be certain ones that are like very purposeful, and it feels like they're putting more energy in those purposeful conversations than just like having a bunch of cool ones all the time. And instead they just wave at you and say hi as you run by, which is fair enough. That game's doing a lot of other stuff that's more important, but I think Alan Wake 1 does that better. It's just like people living their lives in this little town, hanging out, just walking around.
Yeah.
Neat.
Alan Wake 2 is open world, right? Is it an open
No,
world
it's-
game?
It's
not
linear.
It's linear.
very-
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like it's chapter based as well. So
Oh,
you
great.
go through the chapter and you move
Okay.
forward, which I think Alan Wake needs to be. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it would be so hard to like do the narrative stuff they want to do and like make sure that everyone was having their own like is going through the path and the story route. Like one of my main complaints of Tears of the Kingdom was that you find the tears in whatever order that you happen to find them.
Yeah.
And so I like watched the story in probably the stupidest way. I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't want to spoil it, but like someone dies, and I'm like, huh, who is she even? And like my fifth tier was meeting her, and I was like, well, I know that's not fun. Like now I've learned that wrong, and everything's backwards. And I think, and that's their choice. Like they want to be open world, and you can do whatever you want. But I think you sacrifice like plot points hitting when they're supposed to. When you let the player do whatever they want in whatever order. So I think this kind of game only works linear unless you really had like a million years to develop it to make sure everything worked out properly.
It really does feel like TV writing in a way that like no other game I have played does. And like having each chapter be like an episode, and then having even the DLC be episodes 7 and 8, you know, and the fact that like they had immediately planned to do a sequel like right when the first one came out. So that's why there's like a lot more hanging loose threads and why it might feel unsatisfactory, because they had planned to do more of it. They just didn't get the chance to do that for like over a decade. And it does very much feel like they're leaving you on the cliffhanger for the next episode, which I don't know, like plenty of other games do that, I'm sure, but there's something about the way this stuck out where like when you beat the game, they introduce like a character very randomly who is like, we haven't talked about the ending yet, but they just throw out something crazy that you're like, why did you put that there in the ending? What is going on? Where it feels like very obviously set up to be like, yeah, this is going to be season 2 of Alan Wake. This is season 1. Season 2 finale. We're going to tease you what we're doing. In a way that like, I don't think any other game has really done that, that I can think of, that I've experienced anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I loved the one thing that I'm like obsessed with in these games is like all of the TV shows, and like you were kind of mentioning that, Roxy, just like all of like you love books and fictional books and games and stuff, and like discovering that. And
the Night Spring show.
Yeah,
right?
It's done really well here. It's done really well in all their games, I think. Even Max Payne has this. It's like
Control's
really cool.
one is so good.
Controls is the best, maybe, but like early on here, almost 10 years before Control comes out, they're doing it really well here, and I was like really surprised to see that. I mean, what did you guys watch all of the shows when you had the opportunity and stuff?
Hell yeah.
I read every little scrap of paper.
Yeah.
I read everything in every Remedy game. It's like the most rewarding game series ever, because you get so much more out of it. Like I'm so
intentional.
Like you have to play every game in a series before you can enjoy this later one. Like I'm very against that thought. I'm like, just play a game, you'll have fun.
Yeah.
But one thing is Remedy. I think you truly get the most if you play their games together as a thing, because that's what they want you to do, and that's what they're trying to do with this connected universe thing. That I feel like if I just played Alan Wake 2 and not the first one and then Control after, I probably would get way less out of it than.
And there might be things you're not getting because you haven't played a mobile game or something else that they made or whatever. Like I'm sure they've just buried so much shit in these games that's like.
There's so much.
Which is also like kind of a Twin Peaks thing too, right? Of like, it's like, and specifically the thing that I think sometimes you miss is the game is constantly teaching you the rules of its own universe. Like, and if you miss a particular note in Control, or if you miss a particular televised thing, you might miss like a concept that the game is trying to teach you about, like how physics and matter works in this particular world.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you can totally digest the story without it, but it just enhances everything to know as much as you possibly can, which is pretty cool.
Especially Control. There's so many nouns in that game
Yeah.
that you have to learn. It's like object of power, AWE event. Like you're just like, what are all these things? A paranatural or whatever they call themselves. Like, there's so many things to learn. And if you don't read, you just are like, I guess I'm a redheaded woman who has powers. Like you don't know what's going on.
There are bad guys, I guess.
Fly.
Jeremy, to your just like original question of like, would we seek those out and watch them? Like, if I saw something that even I thought might be a TV screen, I was heading for it because I wanted to watch these. And I would even do this thing where, like, when I was first playing this game on the TV that you can kind of see behind me, you can't really see it behind me. For the viewers at home, my sound bar that has a subwoofer, I hadn't been able to get it to work for like a year. Like, there was something wrong with it, and I was playing this game, and I was like, I bet this game's even better if I can get this to work and turn off the lights in here and get into it. Even though we've talked, it's not really a survival horror game. But I factory reset my soundbar. I got it working. And so I noticed that, like, well, I tried to get Alan really up close to the TV so I could see as much of the screen and as much detail as possible. But the sound is really impressive in this game as well, especially when, like, watching or listening to things, because not only is that helpful in combat when you're like, oh, I hear someone behind me, I know to pivot around, but I would like, depending on where Alan would stand, the volume on the TV would be better or worse, and would come from in front or to the right.
Directional?
Yeah, it was really just impressive. And so, like, I think a lot of times when games give you stuff like this to, like, watch or whatever, I'm positioning my character less so that they would be able to see it, and more so that, like, I can see it.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Selfishly, like, Alan's not watching this, but I am, sort of thing.
It made me wish there was, like, a way to click in to do a first-person view, because I feel like I get spoiled, and a bunch of other games I play let me do that, where I can switch from first-person to third-person, so I'd, like, keep wanting to, like, click in so I could get a better shot of it. But no, that's not how this game works. Yeah.
They knew that they should have done that in 1 and do it in 2.
Wait, so 2 does that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome.
huge.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Look at how far we've come in over a decade. They did it.
It took 10 years or 13 years.
On the, like, we talked about collectibles a little bit, but on, like, the things you will seek out in this game that are technically just extra, like the TV, the radios,
Thermoses.
the thermoses, like, this game, surprisingly, it's got like collectibles or whatever that reward you with more story or more like a rich background to the game, and then the thermoses, which do literally nothing. But if I saw one, there's no way I'm leaving it. I'm like seeking those big things out.
Yeah, it like gives you a reason to explore also.
Yeah.
And there is like a little statistics thing that you can go up and look at. That's how I even knew that the cans were a thing. So I remember when I encountered that first one, I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I wonder if I can shoot it. And then it let me do that.
Yes.
I had physics on it. And then later when I was just trying to see how many thermoses I had, I was like, wait, that was a stat? Like, I'm trying to find these. Okay, sure.
Yeah, so good. It's such like a cheesy collectible that I think in some other games I'd be like, this is stupid. Why are they having me do this? But I'm like, oh, I do like collecting my Mr. Writer Man's coffees for him.
It like activates some neuron in my brain that is like, ooh, yes, collect all the things because it's a video game. And then like the manuscripts are things that literally add to the story. Totally. So it does reward like some of these things, especially with the TV shows and stuff too. So they've got like useful ones and then useless ones that are just fun and I got obsessed with for some reason.
Reading the manuscripts is like 90% of this game. Like the Parcher ones, like that's the whole point. It's like if you don't read those, it's like, oh, you miss out. It makes you want to go back
too. And there's so many ones that are only available on nightmare mode, which I was like, I don't have the dedication.
Are there really?
To do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like there's a bunch that was just completely locked out of that you couldn't find because it's not nightmare mode.
Oh god.
I found almost as many as I could on regular or easy difficulty, but some of those I'm gonna have to look up later. Yeah, exactly.
Haley, I'm once again going to ask you to be our person from the future since you're playing Alan Wake 2. Do we have thermoses and manuscript pages to collect?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, you don't collect you don't collect the thermoses. They're the saves points in Alan Wake 2.
Oh, neat.
Interesting. Well, in this game, there's just like these checkpoints anyway, so I guess either way.
Yeah. But there's
Okay.
manuscript pages like crazy in that.
Is there
game.
like lunch boxes or something? I've seen like the first 2 hours of Alan Wake 2.
That's how the upgrade system works for Saga. Is whenever you find a lunch box, it gives you pieces of these like papers that you then use to be able to write a page to upgrade your gun. And then Alan
cool.
is like,
Oh, neat.
"Oh, Saga realized she could fit 2 bolts in her like her arrow thing, and then that writes it into reality, and now you can have 2 bolts in your thing."
So Saga
amazing.
remembered she has a tank. Just a big
Yeah.
tank.
It's got a bunch of Christmas lights on it. So I do want to, just for the sake of, eventually getting us out of here, talk story, because it's the thing about the game that I still don't know if I fully understand what happened.
And that's okay.
Okay, that
That's
makes
the point
me
of
feel a lot
Remedy, I
better.
think. It's okay.
Cool. Like, I understand that this company is known for making games that don't have as many hard answers as some of us, like myself, maybe would like, and I do appreciate an air, like a bit of mystery as well, even when you finish something. But I genuinely, I like this game a lot. This is like a 7 and an 8 out of 10 for me. This was a really fun experience. I don't know how I feel about the story, but I like how they told it, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
Like the ride. You enjoyed the ride with it, maybe.
I did, absolutely. Roxy, this was also your first time just going through the whole story.
On
was
my
there anything
own.
you want to sort of like highlight, or just an aspect of the story to like kick this off for us?
I mean, like I was talking about how it feels like it's paced episodically. That's why it feels like it doesn't have a traditional 3-act structure or like something like that throughout the entire game. It's like all these little mini vignettes kind of like stitched together. At the point where like when I was going through the last chapter, I was like, why did they make me do all this open world like journeying where it should have just taken me from this scene to like the final boss or something?
Because
where,
you
like,
could get in a car.
Yes,
Because
you
they
get in the
spent the
car
money
for
to
the
make it,
hour. Yeah, where it's just like the pacing would sometimes feel weird. Where like, yeah, this is an episodic structure more than like a complete experience in a way.
Yeah.
That would just like throw me off. Where I was like, man, I'm all geared up for the final, and I was like, oh wait, no, there's like an extra hour. 2 hours of game that I have to keep going through this open world area, and then I have to fight a Christine monster truck, I guess. And then there's a junkyard, and I don't know what's happening.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, if you love Stephen King. So there's like a lot to love about it, and then a lot that is just like baffling. And then yeah, I think for someone like me who wants more hard answers as well, Connor, like I have to suspend my disbelief with this particular studio and these particular games, whereas usually I would just be like, that's so frustrating, I don't know if I can put up with it. But for some reason, I can with Remedy, where I'm just like, okay, well, I want to see what they're doing next. Okay, maybe I'll get some answers. Okay,
You trust
maybe
them.
Yeah, I trust them. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, where it's like, I'll get some answers, but then they're going to give me even more questions, or it's just like mystery box the studio. Which, I'm hoping there will be an end point of some kind, or just like maybe a stopping point, so then we can look back at everything and then get more answers. But I don't know. I've heard that Alan Wake 2 leaves room for whatever's coming next as well, which makes sense. That's a smart thing to do. But I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to be on the hook for it in a way.
Sure.
Like if this is going to be another 10, 20 years or something. So I think they have an ending in mind, probably. So I'm going to keep trusting them until we get to that point and then look back, which is like a little wonky to be able to say about like a singular game then. But at least like with the ending to Alan Wake, we get a little bit of catharsis where, can I talk about the ending now, I guess? Is that
Oh
okay?
yeah, story stuff fully wide open for anybody.
Okay, so like Alan is going through this entire journey to save his wife. And at the end, he learns, oh, I can save her, but there's a cost. Like, the reason why this guy failed to bring back his wife, or why things went bad last time, is because he thought he could save his wife and then he'd be fine too. That there would be no cost he had to pay. And so Alan comes to that conclusion, like, oh, I can save my wife, but then I'm stuck here. I have to stay here. So he makes, like, a selfless choice to do that, which I feel like, I wasn't sure how they were gonna really kind of spin that. They don't get into it as much as they could. You just see his wife up there, and then he's not there anymore. So at least you get to save Alice. You get the objective of saving Alice, so it does feel like satisfying in that sense. So he's accomplished his objective, but everything's still fucked, I guess. And they're setting up things for like the cyclical cycle of the lamp lady. We got a new lamp lady who is Rose. The FBI guy who was, man, that FBI guy character, you can cut him out of the story entirely, and it feels like he does not need to be there in the first Alan Wake anyway.
Man, I love Nightingale though. He's so stupid.
Yeah.
He's like the dumbest character.
Yeah, I think like, so sometimes in games I'll just get like really into like, you know, the narrative they're presenting where this guy is such a fucking annoying asshole who every time he sees Alan, he doesn't call him by his name, he calls him by a different writer, who 50 out of 50% of the time I would know who it was. Where he's like, hey, yeah, James Joyce, fuck you, or something. Where like, he just seemed like kind of a plot device to just get Alan running through the forest more. Which, like, he is supposed to be an annoyance to Alan. So I feel like I was embodying him in that sense. Be like, man, this dude is so annoying. But, like, he is, like, very funny and weird in a way. And is very well, like, characterized. Because you can go and find his hotel room he was staying in. And I kind of wish there was more notes or something in there. There's, like, a bunch of photos of, like, Alan and his friends and his family that he's taken that Alan makes no comment on for some reason. But it just shows that, like, they have that little extra characterization there that, like, you can completely miss that. You don't have to see that guy's room, but it's there.
I've heard a lot of people try to argue that Nightingale actually isn't real. Alan just wrote him up in order to progress the story.
Oh,
in a quicker manner.
I believe it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because he's, like, writing Departure to try to get Alice out and get free, but we're playing the Alan who's, like, in the book. But it's almost like it's kind of like there's not, but it's almost like there's two Alans, the one writing and the one we are. And then, like, the pages let us do third-person narrative perspective on the story in general, so we get to see peaks of it, like, even if it's happening off stage or in the past or in the future or what have you. And I think the reason that he's so, like, here I am, get out of here, it's just, like, Alan's probably like, damn, I need to get to this next area. What's a dumb way to get me there? The guy shows up and shoots at me. And, like, and so a lot of people are like, is Nightingale even real? Is he even there? And, like, he has a part in 2, which is interesting as well. And, like, that's pretty early, like, start of the game, honestly.
Yeah,
and
I didn't recognize who that was until I went back to play this, and I was like, wait a minute, that's that guy?
I did not
shit.
recognize him at all, he looks completely different, to be fair. And it's like, that's interesting, I think, because that also leads into the, like, is Alan real also? Because he's also very tropey and stereotypical. Like, is Thomas Zane writing this whole time and we don't even know it? Like, that's a very classic, like, Alan Wake theory, like, on Reddit. It's like someone writing 8 pages. Like, Alan's not even real. It's just Thomas Zane still writing his poems, like, trying to get out, and he's using Alan now. Like, who knows? Like, I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I was trying to break down, like, which reality am I in, which one is real? Was the opening real Alan, or was that story Alan? Or, like, is Thomas Zane writing him? What?
What's happening?
I felt so lost, in a way that, like, I've been told that Alan Wake 2 explains a little bit more, but I'm sure it doesn't explain a lot. Because that seems to be their style.
It kind of does explain a lot and then moves on to new, really more confusing stuff.
Okay.
So you're kind of like, oh, I feel a bit better about that, but stuff is way more confusing, and now I'm focusing on this, so I don't even get a lot of seconds to feel satisfied. I'm just moved on to the next hyper complex meta narrative intermediary thing.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, like, I remember texting a friend when I first started playing this game, and I was like, yeah, I'm playing Alan Wake, and it's definitely something, thinking that, like, some of this would be cleared up, but as we learn, like, not everything gets cleared up, and there's more questions that sort of get asked about this game, like, in the sequel, in the story, and whatever's going on. We don't have to go through, like, the whole entire story. I know we've been talking about it for a while now, but does Haley, I think I'll ask you specifically, since you are in the middle of 2 now, is there anything that how do I want to ask this? Because I'm like, maybe it's better to just not ask this question and just play the game. Is there anything that you think you could have cleared up for yourself, or you would like to clear up for your past self going into number 2, that you're like, oh, I just missed this and it happened, rather than like you learned this? Yeah.
Just a plot point that's like, oh, I can't believe I wasn't paying attention during a cutscene or something.
Sure, or exactly. Yeah.
They're not very clear about what the bright presence is, and like they don't even explicitly talk about it that effectively, but like the bright presence is as real as the dark presence is.
Okay.
Oh.
But yeah, and like so when Thomas Zane is in the scuba suit and has the light popping out of his head, and you're like, oh, it's Thomas Zane. That's actually the dark presence who took over Thomas Zane's body.
Oh.
And the bright presence is trying to help Alan, like, almost through Thomas Zane's body. So that's why it's always like, Thomas Zane is helping me. It's actually the bright presence. Because I guess when Thomas Zane dived down to save Barbara, he wrote himself out of the story. Like, the only way he could figure it out, or so they tell us, who knows if it's true, the only way he could save save the town was just to write him and Barbara out of the story. So that's why Cauldron Lake, like the little island where he stayed and lived, like disappears, is because he wrote it out of the whole world. And then the FBC came in and like made up a volcano story to like cover it up, because that's like their job, is to cover up AWE events. So they're like, there was a volcano, everyone. Anyways, look away. So then all the town is like,
completely
there's nothing
missed that.
here. It was a volcano. And then Alan's like, no, I was just there. And everyone's like gaslighting him into thinking he's crazy. But so yeah, I didn't pick up on that, and that was only like later on when I was watching YouTube videos. It's like, oh, how did I like? And they're not clear enough about it. Like, I don't think, like, it's very much like, oh, I guess that's a thing that's in this game. And a lot of the question too is the bright presence doesn't even really know it's the bright presence. Like, it kind of thinks it's Thomas Zane, which makes it even more confusing.
Oh no.
So that's why, like, because there's a few parts even when he's talking to Thomas Zane and he's like, what are you doing? Like, who are you? And it gets confused, and it's like, keep going. And it like gets mad and it's like, go away. Like, thinking about what it is. And then another thing too is, oh, what was I just going to say? There was another thing that I didn't think about until after. Shoot. I might have to come back. There's so much stuff in
there
this
is
game.
a lot. Yes.
I guess there was one thing I couldn't be sure of, whether like the dark presence inhabited the lake or if it like was the lake.
The dark presence is a thing, and the dark place is a place. So the dark place is an area, and it's and there's a way to get to it through Cauldron Lake, and the dark presence is in the dark place trying to get out. So there was an AWE event with Thomas Zane where it tried to get out, and that's Barbara. Like, that's like he like latched onto Barbara and tried to get out. And then apparently there was a second one that we need to learn more about.
Oh yeah, the brothers. Oh my god,
the
we didn't
brothers
even talk
did
about
an
them.
AWE event. Yeah,
I love them
they, like,
so
stopped
much.
it with their rock and roll show.
Yeah. So
and then
good.
Alan's the third one, just to stop it to come out again.
Okay.
So it's just constantly trying to escape, and it's using like writers to do that. So it was actually using Dr. Hardman, like the doctor. He's the only reason he's like bringing famous people near the lake is he's trying to use them to figure out what's going on with the lake, because he knows about the dark presence, but he doesn't know how it works. So he did.
Okay.
Yeah, he was Thomas Zane's assistant.
That's right.
So he like knew Thomas Zane got taken in. He's the one who told him to write Barbara back, and then Barbara came back like zombified essentially. She was like, the dark presence had taken her over, so when she came back she was like crazy. So then Dr. Hardman was like, oh I don't know, and then that's when Thomas Zane like wrote himself away. So Hardman was like, oh, what the heck, I need to figure out what's going on here, but how do I do this without I need more creative people, because apparently the dark presence works with like writers. So that's why he like pretends that he's a doctor that specializes in writers to like get them to all come near the lake, and then he uses them to try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, Alan makes a reference, which I thought was really neat, that was like, I think it's not specifically writers, but like artists. So he was talking about like, if there was a artist of any kind of different discipline, this would look completely different. Because at the end, he's looking at words and then turning those into objects with his flashlight. Where like, I remember just mentioning, like, I wonder if Alan wasn't a writer and instead did giant like gallery-sized paintings or something, like what would that look like then, you know? Which opens up a lot of potential to be like, yeah, doing it with writers is more straightforward, but you could do something really weird if you chose somebody who like, I don't know, makes sculptures or something else, which would be cool.
Yeah, true. So maybe why it only worked with Alan after all those other artists were there. Like, it needed to be another writer. Maybe Hardman didn't think about that.
Yeah, because the last time it worked was with the brothers who were writing lyrics, but also like doing music, and because there was writing within the music is why that worked. Maybe.
Okay, we're finding some answers as we talk about it. Okay, very cool.
It's also like I'm hearing you guys talk, and I did read through the whole plot through like Wikipedia as we were like going, and like it. Again, it's like Broken Record, Twin Peaks. These are exact concepts pulled from Twin Peaks, like the Black Lodge and the White Lodge, and these presences that inhabit bodies, and they're trying to escape, and they don't know who they are. I mean, up down to the finest detail of it.
Yeah, like the well-lit place was very much like, that's just from Twin Peaks.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, like this is like nuts how straight from the headlines, ripped from the headlines, this this story is. So risky, right? Like we're talking about the story, like it's a huge risk to tell a story like they told in Twin Peaks. Famously, that show didn't work. Like people didn't like it. Like it got canceled after like a season and a half, and then.
Well, you know why that was, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard the interviews and stuff, right?
Of Twin Peaks. Well, David Lynch leaving or whatever.
Yeah, like season 1 was a big hit, and then in season 2, he got told by the executives like, "Well, you got to solve the murder. You have to do it." And he was like, "What? That's not the point of it. What?
Right.
You want me to solve the central mystery that got people invested in this in season 2." So he was forced to do that and like basically just kind of faded away, and then it imploded.
Yeah, he kind of quit. I think after that.
Which was such a shame.
Right, because season 3 that came out in 2017 is famously incredible. It's like one of the best things ever.
I need to watch that stuff.
I just think it's like, Lynch, other like kind of more avant-garde storytellers, clearly Sam Lake, like the people at Remedy, they're clearly into this kind of thing, which is like, it's not about really the plot machinations, is not necessarily why you come to it. So they're not really telling like a straightforward story. And I think that's like, I mean, it's cool, it's risky, but it's like totally valid when people are like, I don't like this. I don't know what's going on. It's not satisfying. I do like stuff like this though. So it is when I'm hearing all this, I'm just like eating it up. Like, oh, I want more. I want more. I want more. But I do think it is super niche. So the fact that Alan Wake 2 is such a hit, that's kind of saying a lot, I think.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of which, I think I'd like to, just about pivot to close us out. But I want to turn to Haley one last time and just ask, like, first impressions on, and I know you're about 2/3 of the way through the game at this point. What do you think about Alan Wake 2 so far? I know we've been touching on it, but coming from 1, like, is it more satisfying? I'm curious.
I think this studio is doing things with narrative that games have never done before in a really masterful way.
Wow.
To the point that I almost was worried I was just imposing my wishes upon the work and like making it seem like that's what they were doing. But like upon thinking about it a lot, I think Alan Wake 1 was really about what's a video game, what's a TV show, what's a book, and then what do you do when you're a player, a watcher, or a reader, and where's the best places to cross over those things to have this like intermediary experience that feels like Twin Peaks, but also has gameplay and also feels like you're reading a Stephen King novel. And it's like, how do you cross over those things? So it was a lot like gameplay mechanics as literary devices is kind of what I thought about it. Like the collectibles are dramatic irony pieces. Like it's just dramatic irony and you pick up it off the ground, but only a game can do that. Like a play can do it in its own unique play way. Like it's not like games are better than anything else, but games can only do it in an interactive way, which is really interesting. And I think they knew that. And that's the purpose of that game, was to play with that idea of like, what are these different things? And they had a lot of fun with it, and I think they did it really well. And what I think Alan Wake 2 seems to be about, and it's not spoiler at all, just like the gist of what I think they're aiming for as like an artistic vision, is meta-narrative things combining through those intermediary concepts. So now they're layering on top of book, show, and game is also live performances. So it's like you have a graph and they added an extra tangent to the graph and now it's like 40. It's like crazy. So now they're layering on the likenesses of the characters as real human beings into these narratives, and it's intermediary now and not just
wow.
mixed media. Because mixed media is when it's just a lot of media, but intermediary is when you're actually putting live performance into the thing too, and it's just like blown it off the top of the, like, I think it's amazing. There's certain scenes where they really lean into the live performance aspect of it, and those are the most memorable ones that you're just like, oh my god, I can't wait for games to keep doing shit like this, because it's amazing, and it's just so on purpose and exactly what they knew they wanted to do, and they did it, and it's done, and here it is in a little chapter, and you're like, oh my god, what the hell, like, it's just
wow.
and I not to spoil anything, but yeah, there's certain chapters in that game where you're just like, holy shit, games are rad, like, that's just like how you walk away from it.
That's
and it's
cool.
because really talented creative people like got together and had an idea, and instead of it being too many cooks in the kitchen, they were like, this is what we're talking about, and they just made it, and it's like, it's so good. And it's I think a lot of times with really huge AAA gaming, it's like really cool ideas get implemented, but like games are hard because you don't know how the player's going to interact with things, but they know what to do and they do it really good. And it's just made me like such a nerd for them. And now I'm like looking into all the writers and what they've worked on before to like kind of get a sense of where, because it's not just Sam Lake. Of course, he's the figurehead. He's like the face. He's like the Kojima of the studio, and he seems like a lovely dude who treats his writers really well and like values their opinions. And I think that's why they have such a successful writing narrative style there. But it's truly just like Alan Wake 1 with an extra tangent added to it, so it feels more three-dimensional. And they did a really good job.
That is just so exciting as like a jumping off point into the second game. And I don't know when I'm going to have time for it, but I really want to make that happen by the end of the year for sure.
Yeah, and I think I agree with Jeremy. What you're saying is like, you have to be okay with not knowing what's going on. Like if you come into it being like, I need to know everyone's first name and last name, and did this get resolved? Did that get resolved? Who's this? Are they bad? Are they good? Whatever. You have to just be like, and like not care about it and let the story happen at you. And if you can do that, you'll have like a 10 times better time.
Dang. It's almost like brave of them to have taken, I know there was like an additional little shorter Alan Wake experience that came out.
American
as
Nightmare?
Well. Yes, but it just feels very brave of them.
Sounds like a Green Day album.
It does.
And it's good. I just think it seems brave of them to have taken basically 13 years between telling this story and just being like, yeah, we're just going to do that. And I know that Control was there between those as like a stopgap, at least for them. But like to be like, yeah, we're going to leave all this unanswered and then some as we move into 2. So really cool stuff. All right, well, parting shots for us before we go ahead and close out and plug what we'd like. I just want to give everyone just like a chance to share, their sort of final thoughts on it. Jeremy, has this for you, having played about half of the original game, are you interested in getting into Alan Wake 2 at this point?
Yeah, and I'm going to finish this game too. I actually wasn't sure I was going to finish it until this podcast. Now I'm after Roxy and Haley went off about the story.
Oh, yeah.
It's got that weird thing where like you can, and this is why I love this kind of fiction where it's like you can tell someone the story all the way through with all the spoilers, and somehow that makes them want to see it more. Like there's something weird about it where you're like, oh, I got to see this freak stuff. So now I'm So yeah, I'm definitely gonna finish it, and then I'm definitely gonna play Alan Wake 2.
Awesome.
Absolutely sure. Yeah.
Killer. Rox, final thoughts for you about leaving this game and possibly heading into the second one.
Yeah, I had a really fun experience with this, and like the storytelling is the biggest draw, but like also how Haley was kind of mentioning, like only a game could do what this game is doing, like involving the player and pushing it forward, finding things, whatever. And the way that they play with that in 1 is like very cool, but then hearing you, Haley, again talking about what 2 has done and seeing how they've taken all these years of experience in games and writing narrative and writing interactive narrative and seeing what they can do with that, that's like one of my favorite things. Just like games are a very unique way to tell a story or interact with art that like it can do things that only games can do. And hearing about how that they have just taken that, use their skills and experience to like elevate that even more, and seeing how Alan Wake 1 is kind of like a prototype or just their first step into kind of doing that in a more meta-narrative way, and hearing that is going to pay off and then some and be even cooler, and like you're only halfway through it, You haven't even seen the rest of it too, and like that's the vibe you're getting. Makes me so happy, and like I'm so glad I stayed up until 2 a.m. to finish this fucking thing last night. And I'm very excited to do the DLC as well, and then try and hunt down American Nightmare, because that was like a 360 only. Okay, maybe it is on Steam. I hope so, because it was like
I think so. I
can dig out my 360 and go buy it on the shop if it's still around, I guess. But I'm interested to see that too, and like I don't have a system that can play Alan Wake 2 yet, but I don't know if I can wait to play it. I might have to like watch a no commentary playthrough or something before I can get to it, because man, I want to find out. But like again, like I said, it being a game and being interactive, like no, I gotta wait. It sounds like the ultimate kind of interactive narrative experience.
It's a fun thing to experience for yourself, for sure.
Yeah, so it's gonna be like hard to stop myself from doing that, because I'm like, oh, I want to know, damn it.
Well, thank you, Roxy, as well. And then Haley, for you, final thoughts on this game. I know you've shared a lot today.
Yeah, I think it's really unique, and I think it holds up, and I love that it's getting this love like 13 years later. Because I wasn't paying attention to it at all, so I didn't know it wasn't well received by like the public as much. I can see it being a critical hit, because it's very like the kind of thing that if you think about it and are writing about it in a critical way, you probably think about it a lot different than just like experiencing it. Mm-hmm. But I think it has really fun gameplay. I think it narratively doing things that games did not do at all, not even then, but even sometimes nowadays, like with the fact that games let you have this interactivity with the player that up to the point before games only like interactive plays could do, like where the cats from Cats came up to you in the theater or something. Like, that's like the closest we got before video. Not that cats came after video games, but you know, like interactive plays used to be the only thing where you felt like you were interacting with art in a direct and forceful way, and games can do that. So it's fun to see people who are aware of that like play with that idea within the confines of like in the limitations of video games, because as easy as it is to be like, just make cool stuff, game developers, it's like, yeah, but have you coded one thing ever? It's insanely But this studio, I think this studio has a good team, like you were saying, Roxy. Like, I really trust them. I just am like, go ahead, do whatever you want. Like, there's no like, they kind of rubbed me wrong in the past. Like, up to this point, I'm like, everything they've done, I've really enjoyed. So I'm just like, more, please. Like, I just love Remedy, and I'm excited to see after Alan Wake 2 what they're gonna do next. Like, I'm so curious to how they expand the universe, because it very much feels like we're in the beginning phases, and the popularity that 2 has gotten them is now they have like a little trust fund to be like, okay, let's ramp this shit up. What are we doing next? Like, they probably now have this crazy whiteboard in their office. It's like, here's our 10-year plan, like their Marvel universe, but but more narratively like good.
That's so awesome. Yeah, like that's one of the big things. Like, I hope they get a big chunk of change from Alan Wake 2 and all this hype, people going back and buying the earlier games and Control and everything else. Like, I want them to get more money. Like, keep making games, keep making cool, weird narrative experiences, keep doing it, guys.
Sam Lake said they're so surprised by the reception of Alan Wake 2,
I think
how much
like
money they've made.
Maybe just the gaming space is more prepared for it. Like, maybe it just wasn't prepared for what Alan Wake 1 was doing when it was doing it. They were like, this isn't a third-person cover shooter. This isn't Gears of War. Get out of here. Because, like, the 360... Like, if they... I wonder if it had launched on, like, the PlayStation or something. Maybe it would have been received a little bit differently, like, as an exclusive. The 360 just doesn't feel like as much of the like vehicle for when it came out. So maybe it was just like, you know, that then the product placement was probably just they could get money to do the game, which I could respect. But like, it doesn't look great on paper. So like, I can kind of get why maybe some people were not really as jazzed about it or knew what to make of it when it came out. But like, now people are more media savvy. There's been more years to go by, more games come out where like they can see that. So I feel like it's them reaping the rewards of all of their effort that they put in before. It just hit right, I guess.
Big time. Yeah. And I guess lastly for me is just that even though I really don't have any more of the answers that I came into this episode like maybe hoping to find, I had a really good time with this and I'm super intrigued going into the second one. And like all of you, I am really curious to experience what they've done and you know. And Haley, I'm so glad that you played this game a couple months ago, because without that, I don't buy this game at a retro store, and then I don't ask Roxy if she wants to do it for Press X to Scream this month. So So thank you for talking about it in the first place.
Yeah, that's weird to me that because I haven't been like on MinMax that long, but the fact that things I say make people do things also is like a very interesting concept to my brain.
A lot of power.
It's very fun.
And
make everyone play Remedy games.
And this is a whole nother leg of what Remedy wants to happen.
And did Alan Wake write this? What is going on right now? You make the podcast, then we do it.
We're a part of the DLC for 2, and no, we don't know it yet.
But shit.
All that being said, this has been such a blast. Thank you everyone for joining us for episode 10 of Press X to Scream here at Super NPC Radio. Let's go ahead and go around and just plug stuff on our way out today. And Haley, we'll start with you. Thanks again for joining. This was so much fun having you on. Appreciate you being here. What do you want to plug today?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was super fun. I guess I'm on MinMax a lot these days. The Deepest Dive, I'll definitely plug that because it's just more Alan Wake stuff. So yeah, that's on MinMax's YouTube channel. We have a whole playlist just called Deepest Dive. So we have episode 1 out. We're recording episode 2, which is, I guess, listeners today because this is coming out tomorrow. So
yes.
The 14th. So we're recording that, and I think it comes out the very next day. So on Wednesday, it'll be listenable. And then recording the last episode of that at the end of the month. And then I go by Haley Facts on all socials. So anywhere you can find Haley Facts is where I am. And yeah, if you're a game dev and you have legal questions, I'm also a lawyer and I can help you and you can be my client. So if you ever have questions about IP related stuff or starting a company or anything like that, I always say, like, I hate that. I've definitely said to devs, like, always DM me. I didn't realize I had to be following them though. Like, that's a bummer. So I guess if you Google my name, my work email comes up at my law firm, so you can do it that way if you want to.
Awesome. And I'll put links to everything else in the YouTube show notes so people can just click to find the Deepest Dive and then you on socials as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Jeremy Schmidt. Oh, my partner in slime, pal.
Oh,
what do you have to say for yourself on the way out?
Thanks for subscribing to the Patreon. If you're listening to this on the Patreon, thank you for subscribing. And if you're not, get over there. It's a good time on that Patreon. Patreon.com/Super NPC Radio. We're doing Resident Evil 2 Games Club. Who knows what we're going to do next? And you could be a part of deciding that. You could vote on the next Games Club.
It's true.
Oh, what a time.
We'll have an election at the end of the month for our next club. We do it every time, and boy, it's fun to get out the vote.
Get out the vote.
Well, buddy, thank you for joining us. This is a blast having you. And Roxy, what do you want to plug on your way out? Thanks for doing this and having us all on your great show.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is very different from like the previous formats, but it's fun, and I'm ready to embrace
it's the
whatever.
Conner format where it's somehow 2 hours still.
I mean, I had a blast doing it. So thanks for choosing this game because I don't know if I would have played it if you hadn't, which I'm really glad you did because like I completely forgot Alan Wake 2 was coming out. Then we're playing this, and then everyone's getting hyped for Alan Wake 2, and I was like, oh, okay, great. Now I remember everything that happened. But yeah, I am on Twitter, Twitch, and Blue Sky, all as Red Mage Roxy, so I'm really easy to find. I'm streaming 3 days a week. Like I said, stream this game until 2 a.m. my time, which is not a normal time. I'm sorry for everyone I kept up, but also thank you for hanging out with me. And I'm also an artist, so I have like an Etsy store and stuff and a webcomic and working on all kinds of other stuff, doing some art streams. And Scary Basement, which is the horror movie podcast I do, that's part of Super NPC Network, also has a YouTube channel that's fairly new, so I'd like to get the word out more for that, for people to go give it a follow, go listen to episodes, give us likes, thumbs up, subscribes, all that nonsense. We really appreciate it.
Killer. And then as for me, Conner McCabe, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Conner_McCabe. I'm on Blue Sky at Conner McCabe. And then if you're listening to this and you don't listen to my podcast, Call Me By Your Game, go check it out. Like I said earlier, I have people on to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable game from a particular moment in their life. It's a real cozy, nostalgic show on the network. And then I think that's pretty much it. If you'll follow me on social media, you'll see all the other stuff I'm up to, whether it's performing in LA or a game that my first ever video game that I'm releasing quite soon. So keep an eye out for Farewell Fava. Really excited about that.
Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of fun. But yeah, that'll do it for this episode of Press X to Scream. Who knows what we're going to talk about next month? Roxy and I floated, Jeremy, we floated Parasite Eve.
I'm in.
I thought he might be.
100%.
But for now, thank you for joining us for hearing our discussion on Alan Wake. We will see you on the next one.